As you might have seen earlier, I don't know if you have any interest in Pokemon, but if you do, what's your favorite Pokemon?
Yeah, I haven't dabbled in Pokemon since I was a young lad. Charizard ain't so bad, right? Charizard's good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. That's a good answer. Good. Let's get into it. We have lots of questions, but only a certain time. So we'll try to cover a bit of variation of things. One thing that's keep coming up, we have a couple of variations of this question when it comes to Cypress for end-to-end, and also how does component testing fit into the end-to-end testing that Cypress provides?
Yeah.
So any comment on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to be perfectly clear, is that you get to do both, and you get to choose. You can do both at the same time. You can have both end-to-end tests and both component tests in your code base. You get the power of both, and they're both act as first-class citizens. So there's not like this, challenge between the two. Now, in terms of how does component testing fit into end-to-end testing that Cypress provides is it's a kind of a generalized topic, which we can go into deeply of like when you should use end-to-end tests, when you should use component tests. But kind of a general rule of thumb here is that if you're not ready to write end-to-end tests because you're developing an application, you're just kind of at this point where you're just creating components, and so you're building them all together, you're stitching them together to build pages and build flows in your application. Component testing is a great place to start, right? Get started with adding component tests. Get confidence as you're iterating on them. And then once you kind of have all these things stitched up, you're in a good place to start writing some end-to-end tests.
Cool. We have two questions that are somewhat related. I think one was on the release. I'm sorry if you already mentioned a date. And the other one was you mentioned preview. Someone was curious what kind of early preview means. Is it something like beta access, or is it you showing it on the screen?
Yeah, so with regards to a date, no date to share exactly, but we're hoping very soon. In terms of preview, this is just a preview that I'm providing. You can actually use the experimental version of Cypress today. It just with just downloading the latest version of Cypress. You just have to flip a experimental flag. We have some docs for that as well. So you can start dabbling with these APIs and the code I've kind of shown you today. And then once we release it out, you'll get to see the full experience. If we do have like an official kind of preview program, that we'll definitely let the community know.
Great. Of course, it's the hot topic of today and yesterday. Does Cypress work with Vite?
Yes.
Good. Quick one. And then there were people being a bit curious about component testing, trying to understand it. I think I saw also your team was answering some answers in the questions in the chat. But is component testing like unit testing for components?
Yeah, I mean, effectively, I think traditionally the way a lot of people see unit testing is, classical. I have a function, you give it A and B parameters and an output C. You can kind of look at it in that generic way, but component testing is a form of unit testing, yes. But to be frank, it's an up level version of that, right? Because we're involving the browser here. We're doing we're dealing with that whole layer. So it is a form of unit testing, but I think it deserves its own name because it's a special type of unit testing itself, and it kind of lives in this area between integration and unit testing, I think.
Yeah. There was a couple of questions coming up when you talked about mount. So one was, does mount load the child components as well, or is there a mocking option? And I don't need to necessarily answer your two questions in one, but the other one on the same topic was, how are subcomponents handled with the mount function?
Yeah, if there are subcomponents there in the component, it should be mounted as well. Yeah.
Good. Can Cypress be run from a Docker container?
That is not directly related to this. Yes, they can. Actually, that's how technically we use it in CI today.
And there was also a question on, can we use Cypress when building Ionic and Vue apps?
Absolutely.
I guess that was also covered in your talk towards the end there.
Yeah, and we're going to be releasing a full-on component testing examples repository. We actually do one have live already, and I can provide a link for that. And we already do have some Ionic examples, though I have to check if we have a Vue version of Ionic just yet, but we will.
Okay, cool. And one last question before we thank you for your talk. How should we have the test run in all browsers that are required to be supported?
So Cypress currently today supports Chromium-based browsers and Firefox, and you get to leverage those same browsers for doing your component testing as well. So those are the browsers we provide as of today. There are some efforts ongoing, and in the future where we're working on WebKit support, which is effectively Safari support as well.
Cool. Well then, thanks a lot, Amir. Again,
No problem.
it was great to have you here with us talking, and thanks for answering all the questions, and also your team for doing that. So I'm sure people can reach out on the social medias, and thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Take care.